لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا.
All praise be to Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. And peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, I welcome you to your program with the Prophet. An episode today will be unique as all the episodes about the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, since we're talking about the greatest man ever walked in earth and the people around him. Looking how he treated them, how they treated him, looking into their lives and benefiting from their own lives. In this episode, we'll be focusing on the greatest example of how real human rights are practiced by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by the Muslims in reality. Not in a time where many people talk about human rights and we see discrimination taking place, all aspects of life. We see double standards being applied everywhere in the world, where some people are felt more equal than others. Here, we'll focus on how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam treated those who were marginalized in that Jahili pre-Islamic society. We'll be talking about how a man who was a slave most of his life, who didn't even owe himself, became a master and referred to as the master of the believers. Not because of his family lineage, not because of his wealth, not because of his position, not because of his degrees, but because of his iman, of his taqwa, of his closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of his sacrifices for the truth, for you and me, for all humanity to live in peace, to live a dignified life. Our story starts with the first encounter this man had with the Prophet and his companion, Abu Bakr. May Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet ﷺ, at the early times of his da'wah, was moving in one of the valleys of Mecca along with Abu Bakr. They felt thirsty. There was no water. You know, Mecca is a barren land, okay? Had no rivers. As Ibrahim alayhi salam said, بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرَعٍ, in a valley where there is no plantation. So they saw a herd of sheep with a black, thin, tall man taking care of it as a shepherd. They approached him and said to him, "Can you milk one of these goats for us?" She said, "These are not mine, and these goats are mine, but they have no milk in them." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Can you spare one of them to me so I could look at?" He said, "Okay, it's up to you." He took the goat to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Bismillah," in the name of Allah, and he started praising Allah and making dua, holding the udder of the goat. The udder was swallowing, puffing up, and he started milking it. He drank, Abu Bakr drank, and Bilal drank. That was the first encounter that Bilal ibn Rabah, the Habashi or the Abyssinian slave of Abdullah ibn Jad'an, had with the Prophet. And he saw this miracle taking place in front of his eyes. He saw those two gentlemen treating him in the most humane way that he has never experienced. Anyway, Bilal was having another role playing in Mecca. He was an artist, yes, because his soft, beautiful voice, he was among the singers, if not the best singer in Mecca. So, and he was a slave for Abdullah ibn Jad'an. Therefore, he would sing for the Qurayshis in their weddings, in their happy events, and he was running his life. But when he saw this position, later on, he knew that those two men were no other than Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is calling for a new religion that is inviting people to worship Allah alone and to leave all these idols, to live a dignified life. When he heard the message, he immediately accepted it. Therefore, he was among the early companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who accepted Islam. He accepted Islam in secret and kept that as a secret until that secret was revealed, unfortunately, later on and discovered by some of the tyrant Qurayshis who passed the news to his master, Abdullah ibn Jad'an, who immediately got rid of him and gave him to those tyrant persecutors to persecute him. We as Muslims know the name Bilal. Muslim children all over the world named after Bilal. They feel honored to be named after this ex-slave who happened to be among the greatest companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who held a very high position regardless of his color, of his family background, of his poverty, of all these issues, mean nothing when it comes to the measurement of a good Muslim. So Bilal started a new phase in his life, a phase of persecution, a phase of, unfortunately, savage torture that at the hands of savage people who have had no mercy at all. And the Prophet ﷺ and many of his companions were protected by their families because they were belonging to Quraysh. But this group of people were dealt with just like the untouchables, okay? In a very savage way. They were harshly persecuted at the hands of their tyrants, like Ammar ibn Yasir and his family, Yasir and his mother Sumayya, like Khabbab ibn al-Arat, like many others, including Bilal himself. When they discovered that he became a Muslim, they tried to seduce him through many ways, tried to convince him to change his mind. But his slogan was, Ahadun Ahad. There is no God but Allah. This didn't please them. They were very angry at him, and they found a chance through which they could show others, if anybody would go in the way of Muhammad, will persecute it in this way. So Bilal went through very harsh persecutions. Some of the other slaves would give in to those persecutors and accept leaving Islam by their lips, but they keep it in their heart, as Allah said in the Quran, إِلَّا وَمَنْ قَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌ بِالْإِيمَانِ, whose heart is convinced with Iman. And most of them, all of them, were convinced with Iman, but under the severe persecution, they had to give in to their persecutors, with the exception of Bilal. Bilal was there all the time to say Ahadun Ahad. They would take him to the hot sand of Mecca, burning sand of Mecca. In the midday, they will make him naked and put heavy stones on him so he would feel the heat more. They will beat him. Sometimes they will cover him with metal so the heat will be greater, and deprive him of drinking water for a long time. When they get tired of him, they will just put a robe on his neck and let the children of Mecca take him away, ridiculing him in the streets of Mecca, spitting on him, beating him on him, doing all they could do to harm him. And his position was still and firm by saying Ahadun Ahad. This will make the end of this episode. Therefore, another episode will be devoted to Bilal, who is deserving of many episodes to talk about him. Because of the limited time for these episodes, I had to limit the stories that I present as short as possible to fit in the time and look at the most important incidents in these stories of the companions, and before them all the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا.